no inspiration, no inspiration. Oh, let me be, no. Wonderful music of nowhere, trying to get somewhere, but what could I do? What could I do? Let's face it, at the end of the day, that's all there is to making a song.
Due to processing. Another example, this one is a so-called neurological example, meaning it doesn't occur in everybody, but it does occur in some people, and that is called synesthesia. Synesthesia is a phenomenon when one sensory modality is interpreted by the brain as if it were a different sensory modality. Therefore, people with synesthesia may see numbers or hear light or smell colors. A color will have a smell to them. This happens because one part of the brain is interpreting sensory input of a different sort. So if you have visual information going to your auditory cortex, the auditory cortex will interpret it in the way that it knows how, as a sound. You will be able to hear light. It's not clear whether this synesthesia represents a bleeding over of information from one sensory area to an adjacent sensory area in the brain, or if there are actually specific connections being made, if this is an alternate type of wiring in the brain. To some extent, there is some synesthesia even in. There is also temporal synchronization. Sounds and sights like clapping hands seem to be simultaneous. However, the light traveling from somebody clapping their hands travels much faster than the sound waves propagate. Therefore, the two sensory inputs do not arrive at your sensory organs, at exactly the same time. It also takes a slightly different amount of time for your brain to process those two types of information. And yet, when we look at somebody clapping their hands, the two events appear to be exactly simultaneous. That, however, is a constructed illusion in your brain. Your brain synchronizes the two events because it knows that they're supposed to occur at the same time. In fact, as long as the visual and auditory information are within 80 milliseconds of each other, your brain will perceive them as being simultaneous. So, therefore, if someone is clapping their hands while moving farther and farther away from you, and therefore the difference in time between the visual and auditory information is getting farther and farther apart, they will still seem to be synchronous, seem to be occurring at the exact same moment until they are arriving at greater than 80 milliseconds apart, which will occur when someone is about 90 feet or 27 meters away. At that point, they will suddenly become noticeably asynchronous. So it's not the kind of thing that happens gradually. Your brain keeps them synchronous until you're outside of that 80 millisecond window, and then it's suddenly noticeably asynchronous. It's also true that our brains actually see, or at least infer, a little bit into the future. When we catch a baseball, the 80 milliseconds it takes for your brain to process the visual information would make you miss the ball